is, number one, is even in terms of a single consciousness. But number two is and self-cognition. And if if up above, we went through Noam Belden's concise, very clear layout of the very same information, but frankly, much more clearly, as Gesang Yeshe said when he was studying at the University of Virginia. He was already an accomplished scholar from studying at Losaling. He wasn't a geisha, but he was an accomplished scholar. And he said the problem, as you'll remember my comment, my relaying his comment, the Mongolians are just plain too clear. He considered it a fault to be that clear. And that's the very reason why I put Noam Belden's note to Giant Sheba's Great Exposition of Tenets. He's frequently clarifying Giant Sheba's exposition in his note. And it's what, is a big part of my education. And frankly, I have to say, I have to admit, I forced my great teacher, Ngawan Lingden, to teach me Belden-Chögye's text along with Giant Sheba's Great Exposition of Tenets. He kept wanting not to teach me that. And I kept saying, no, please teach me that. And he assented to my request. That's how kind he was to me. Never mind his frequent repetitions of comparative tenets among the Gelugpa colleges, the predominant Gelugpa three Gelugpa colleges, but also his willingness to teach me these annotations. After many years of being away from the academic colleges and serving as abbot of the Gyume Tantra College. So he had to pore over the material before he taught it to me. I used to see him as I passed by his window. I used to see him poring over the text. It was really wonderful. What a model. So, and I emphasize how clear Noam Belden is when you get fed up with, not with Tsongkhapa's text, which is quite clear. When you get fed up with going through Jig-me-dam-chö-gya-tsho's layout of Tsongkhapa's sources, which indeed, when we get to it today, I guarantee you'll eventually get fed up. Reading the Bhava Viveka's poetry. I mean, it was clear enough to me eventually when I was translating it eventually, although there's one stanza that I gave up on. And as I was reading it today, I got fed up. I couldn't read my own translations after a while. I figured, okay, I'll remember it as I'm trying to explain my translations to you. And just after a couple of weeks, 3 weeks probably, I had forgotten the meaning of some of them. So we may pass over them rather quickly. I won't be able to say, oh, it'll come below. There's no below. But it's wonderful what Jig-me-dam-chö-gya-tsho has done to point out the stanzas from which Tsongkhapa gathered his points. Now, if we really did a good job on it, we'd take every one of these 5 and put it together with the particular stanzas that Jig-me-dam-chö-gya-tsho has chosen. But by that point, we might all be a good deal older than we are now. The first part of it was about the consciousness appearing as the object, and then the consciousness appearing as the self-cognition side. And I've wanted to bathe our consciousnesses in the mind-only position and in the refutation by Bhava-viveka, because to get more and more of a sense of what's going on. And former consciousness perceiving itself. The word former has a big place in reading Tsongkhapa, because Kidrubje says that the word former has an agentive ending that is a corruption in Tsongkhapa's text. And that reading is going to come later, Kidrup's reading. But here, it's the experiencer. So this is, Tsongkhapa's text is being read as if it's correct. And when I say as if, that doesn't mean I agree with Kidrup. I have no opinion on it. I haven't chosen a side on this issue. So self-cognition, which is the former consciousness perceiving itself, perceiving, so it's the agent, perceiving the consciousness, and you could choose one or the other, perceiving, but appearing as an object, perceiving as an object, perceiving the object, which is that very consciousness apprehending blue. And those two posited as the observed object condition. So what usually is the observed object condition? It's the object. Why do I perceive my hand, my black hand? Because, if there's an external world, because it's impinging on the eye sense power. It's impinging. What does impinging mean in Buddhist terminology? It casts its aspect. Well, that makes a lot of sense. It casts something to the, how does it appear on the film? It casts something to the film. It casts something to the eye sense. And in the, well, I don't want to say I'm up to date on the current science, but to the rods and cones which transfers something to the brain. From here to the rods and cones to the brain. And the Buddhist description of the eye sense power, isn't it isn't it? When they say...
Like sesame seeds.
What?
Like sesame seeds.
Really? Oh, okay. I'm just forgetting. Not just forgetting, I'm forgetting.
I mean, the shape.
The shape of like sesame seeds? Oh, cool, thank you. There's some stuff in there. The stuff being subtle matter, not the coarsest of matter. Like you can see the eye. You can see the eye. This is stuff you can't, if you go up to somebody else's, or you look in the mirror, you can't see it. Or you go up to somebody else's eye, you can't see it with your eye. It's subtle matter. It's the tongue stuff that looks like rods, right?
I thought that was the nose.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Tongue is like crescent moons, maybe? Like crescent?
Yeah, I won't, well, I'll take your word for it. Whereby Bhavaveka also does not assert self-cognizing consciousnesses. That this is like laying on too much. That the seeing the self-cognition, seeing what? Itself by itself, that it's both object and agent. But now, what I want, first I want to ask the simple question, which gets to be asked, not just by me. Does a knife cut itself? Can a knife cut itself? It's like, duh, of course not. Can a finger touch itself? Now, of course, the joke version of that would be to curl your finger up, and, the last digit can touch the first digit. But that's the last digit touching the first digit. But the finger touching itself, can the finger touch itself? Now, I answered that this morning at least. If the finger can't touch itself, sometimes when your finger is smarting, otherwise you couldn't feel the smart. Can the finger feel itself? Yes. It doesn't always feel itself. Somebody will point out your finger is bleeding, and you say, oh, it is. But other times, you cut your finger, with a knife, and ow! Or, something's going wrong with your finger. How do you know it's going wrong? It smarts. It hurts. Right now, my fingers are so sensitive. Why do I wear the glove? The glove gets in my way. I type two keys at the same time. And the, highest type of pristine wisdom often is described as knowing itself by itself. Rangi Vrang Rikpa. In Tibetan, sorry, I mean to announce I'm speaking Tibetan. Rangi means by itself. Rang means itself. Rikpa means knowing. Rangi, rang, rikpa. Now, why do yogis and scholars want to use that terminology? It must be psychologically descriptive, that at some point, it like the consciousness doubles in on itself. Now, in another way, it's like going too far. If you get tied up in that terminology, you get bifurcated away from. Consciousness would be bifurcated away from itself, which must be why it's refuted. Knowing itself by itself. You see, even saying it, it's like my fingers want to shake. Knowing itself by itself. But another way it would be knowing itself by itself. Consciousness going in on itself to the point where it knows itself from the inside. So I think we can use both sides of this to get a sense of, at least with the most profound states, what that means. And why Nyingmas, Keizan Sambo is coming into view. There he is. Why he wants to retain that terminology.
Jeffrey, can I clarify the term?
Yes.
When you said that in the highest Christian wisdom, knowing itself by itself and that it's refuted, who was the one that asserts it and who was the one that refutes that? Who are we quoting when we say that?
Yes. The one asserting it, I would think, would not just be Nyingma, but Geluk also. I wouldn't be surprised if that term was also used even in Geluk, but at least in Nyingma. And then the one refuting it here is Bhava Viveka in Sutra. Who knows what he does in? Is he going to be adamant and carry this over to Tantra? And certainly, as I was complimenting the back room participant, and I was saying, well, I was teasing her the other day, well, at least you have Chandrakirti and so forth, backing up your position that there's no self-cognition. You see, he's in your camp, and in my camp, which has self-cognition, I can't claim Chandrakirti. And it's on this line that a knife does not cut itself, a finger does not touch itself, and knowing itself by itself, he doesn't want to accept. So,
well, Jeffrey, just in connection with that, that verse that's considered to be a condensed perfection of wisdom sutra, the Sosa Rani Yeshi Chuyuwa Tusum Gyoe Yumla Chatsalo Masam Jime Shara Palachin Makimigam.
So the first line was
Masam Jime Shara Palachin Makimiga Namkingoni Sosa Rangrik Yeshi Chuyuwa
So Ranrik.
So
what it doesn't say. So Rangi Rikpa.
Well, when they extend it out, the verse is Sosa Rangrik, And then commentators, teachers explaining it say so rangi rikpe yeshe.
Yeah, but it's not so rangi wrong rikpa.
Well, so that's right. So the so and the rung don't play the same role there, you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't think, I'll ask you, it is so rangi rikpa, I will admit to, but I don't want to admit to so rangi wrong rikpa. Rangi wrong. And I'll be interested if you can find that.
Someone who would say it that way.
Yes, rangi wrong.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, but it's realizing something, so it's so rangi, and it's realizing something, but when it's wrong, if that wrong goes to the consciousness, the consciousness being identified then both with the object and the subject, the consciousness knowing it, which I will say, well, aren't you pouring water into water? Isn't your metaphor saying that? And isn't the metaphor a cop-out for putting it into words? I mean, if we're going to put words into the metaphor, water poured into water, isn't that rangi rang rikpa? So, in any case, well, let me switch to the other side. That when you do put it into words, we Gelupas, and I'll put that hat on now, we don't confuse the agent and the object. And I'll put on my other hat, the Nyingma hat, and say there's a value in conflating. I'll use a different word, I'll obfuscate. And that consciousness is so imbued with emptiness when you get way down to it that it's helpful to say rangi rang and let that rang be consciousness and emptiness. And can we say, going back to Gelug, that this is never done in Gelug? What about what comes to mind? The statement, everything is wind. In highest yoga tantra, in Gelug, everything is wind. Everything is wind. What does that mean? Is this some, are we going to say, well, say this is some secret teaching? Or I've never heard that said. I've never heard it said that's a secret teaching. To get out of all problems by saying that's a secret teaching. See, one of my ways of looking at things is where there's some value in another teaching like Nyingma, where does it come, where is that value rescued within Gelug? Where do we rescue it in Gelug? And is there some value in Gelug that is rescued somewhere in Nyingma? One of the reasons why when I went to Dharamsala, I have my wristwatch given to me by my students when my 60th birthday or when I retired, I forget. My marvelous watch. I put here so I can see the time, but I forget it's there. So I look over here at the computer that has my time. When I went to Dharamsala in 1972, I was intending, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I was intending to go up somewhere in the Himalayas to join with the yoga group of a Hindu teacher whom I met in Wisconsin. He came to Wisconsin when I was finishing up my thesis for some more practical yoga. And why I stayed in Dharamsala was because His Holiness takes the presentation on a topic from different systems' points of view and goes in on that topic from many different points of view, rather than keeping straight many different systems, which I found to be the problem with studying with geishas. And it's a problem with studying with me, because we're trying to get systems straight so that we can do the type of thing that His Holiness does.
Yeah.
So you could get fed up with studying with me because we're getting, oh, that's this system, oh, that's that system, oh, that's this system, as if that's our aim. Pain in the ass, you know? In one way, but if you can't keep the system straight, it's hard to do this other one, which will come later on. As if there's a later on. You know, I'm going to die first. So that's why I occasionally stop and try to bring things together. And actually, I found out later that the guru, the Hindu guru, was trying to get on with the wife of one of my friends. Was hitting on. Maybe so that his world enough in time, the time wouldn't be wasted. That's kind of sad. Fortunately, I made the right choice. But I was really enthralled with His Holiness's technique. And in fact, when I went to Harvard to give a talk, they couldn't stand my talk because I was talking like I was using His Holiness's technique. and bearing in on many different topics, on one topic, through many different systems. They couldn't stand it. They wanted the particularist approach. And I was fool enough not to say what I was doing. I didn't have to say I was following His Holiness, which of course would have turned them off. But that, this is what I was doing, going through many different systems. I just needed to tell them what I was doing. And they were seeking a replacement for somebody this was the kind of sneaky way of doing an interview. And in fact, the fellow was leaving, in fact, to die somewhere else. He was dying. And he was young, fairly young. And it was really sad. It's the husband of Aung San Suu Kyi. And a really wonderful fellow. And he said to people afterwards, there was nobody in the world who could do what Hopkins did. He understood what I was doing. There's no one in the world who could have come to do that. So this is kind of sneaky interview, and which they do. And they also did another one with me later on, which I knew what they were doing then. I didn't know that at this time. But also I wouldn't have done it any differently. But anyway, why did I get into this? Yes, so just to tell you, you can kind of steer me to a broader outlook. So it's important to step back and use the many different systems, because it's even sometimes in the so-called lower system, you can use that tenet as a way to get into a topic, and you may get much more from that. It may be deeper also. Yeah, now I'm turning again. Oh, it's time. So, observed object, and we'll see, please look ahead and see whereby, or due to which, it's the shall we say, the insanity of what was presented in the first three, the foolishness of those three, from Bhaveka's point of view. That's whereby also does not assert self-cognizing consciousness. And then the fifth one, which is, I had a little hard time, it's so obvious what it's saying, but with respect to how self-cognizing consciousness is accepted, this itself, in items 1 through 4, is clear. It's clear how mind-only school and those who accept self-cognizing consciousness, how they accept it. You see, Tsongkhapa is telling us this is how they assert it. Sorry, 1 through 3. Tsongkhapa is quite brief, which is why I use numbers.